Hello, beautiful souls. Welcome to another beautiful episode of Happiness from Within, where our goal is to touch people's hearts and souls at a very deep level through interviews. I am so excited for today's interview. I have an amazing gentleman. His name is Seth Elliott. Seth Elliott is an intuitive business coach, spiritual medium, intuitive life healer, speaker, author, life and death expert. Seth's vision is to inspire the world, one by one, to smile from the inside. He has a great deal to say on the basis which is know who you are, embrace who you are, and be who you are, no matter what the circumstance or what your past, and you can heal from anything. By the time Seth was 32 years old, he had already cheated death 3 times, narrowly escaped 2 kidnappings, and lost 5 good friends within a very brief period of time. Being ill-prepared for these events, he searched everywhere to find a resource that would help him, to no avail. So instead, he developed the SMILE method for healing, and he wrote the first book in a series titled How I Learned to Smile from the Inside, a book on healing and overcoming trauma. He thought if these concepts could work for him, then they might just work for someone else. So I actually have him here on the line. I'm actually going to let him share his amazing story. Hi, Seth. How are you today?
Hi, Janet. I'm good. I'm great. How are you?
I'm excellent. Thank you very much. How's your day going?
It's amazing. Thank you so much for having me. Every time I hear something about myself, it's just so humbling. So thank you for that beautiful introduction.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'd like to give a shout out to David Meltzer's podcast. Because of them, actually, I was able to get this beautiful interview with you. So thank you to them.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Todd.
Yeah, absolutely. So before we go into your story, for those that are listening, can you explain for somebody listening what is a psychic medium?
Sure. So a psychic is someone who can connect with people and their energies and focus on their not so distant past, their present, and their not so distant future. A psychic medium is someone who can connect with, I call them deceased loved ones. So anyone who's passed, actually including animals who passed in your life.
Huh. Interesting. That's great. So I'm really excited to dive into this. So
Me too.
take us back, Seth. Tell us, where are you from?
So I was born in Boston. I grew up in New England and New York City. And then I really feel like I became an adult here in Los Angeles.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the part about the adult. Say that again.
I became an adult here in Los Angeles.
Okay, I love that. That's great.
Yeah.
So I'm really excited to really go deep into your story because I know you've been through a lot,
Yeah.
and I would love for you to take us back to. So I remember reading about you back when you were, I believe, you were 8 years old, or where you were really struggling with the learning disability. You could even take us before then, but just
Right.
take us back of during your childhood, just anywhere you feel in your heart and soul that you want to start, where you feel comfortable.
Sure. Sure. So when I was 5 years old, I knew that I wanted to affect the world somehow. I didn't know what that meant. And I thought perhaps that could be either me being a fireman or an attorney or an actor or a figure skater. So quite the range. But I wanted to do kind of Angelina Jolie, doing amazing things for the world, using my quote unquote success or notoriety, and then doing that, you know. So that was when I started kind of my journey to figure out. I remember exactly where I was, what I was wearing, and I knew that I wanted to touch people in a certain, move people, So from there, as you mentioned, like when I was 8 years old, I was diagnosed with learning disability, and it was a severe learning disability. And at the time, now it would be ADHD, right? But then, I had problems forming sentences, if that makes sense. In terms of chronological order, I would start a story and then go everywhere. So I worked with, I went to special ed for like a year or two, and I knew I was super smart. So I was determined to get out of special ed, and I did. And then interestingly enough, when I was 10 years old, I had some type of intelligence test taken by a new school that I was going to enter into. And they thought I was so brilliant that I should skip the 5th grade and go straight to 6th, which definitely made me happy. My parents were like, no, we think you should really stick with school and stay throughout he's already young, because I was in September. And so I was always the youngest in the class, which was a good decision. And then, interestingly enough, I graduated a year early from high school. So I essentially skipped 11th grade, but, is that going back too far? Keep going?
Oh no, it's fine. This
Okay.
interview can go either way.
Okay.
So we'll just flow with the beautiful energy. Whatever comes out is what's meant to come out. So no, this is awesome.
Okay. All right. So I decided when I was 14 that I wanted I knew I still wanted to affect the world and move the world. So I decided I want to be an actor, and I went in front of the school board and was like, at like 14 years old, I was like, I want to graduate early because I'm a straight A student and I know what I want to do, and I want to go to college near New York City and blah, 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 all that stuff. So as life would have it, they said, yes, it's all good. And then I went to Sarah Lawrence College for 4 years when I was like 16. And it was a really incredible kind of time. I had come out to everyone in my life when I was between like 14 and 15. And it was come out as gay, I guess I should say. And I just knew that I had so much to do in this world. So I went to Sarah Lawrence, spent a year of my life in Ecuador, which was unbelievable. Made some incredible friends, speak fluent Spanish to this day. And I think, I learned what true friendship was when I was in Ecuador. It was by 2 incredible sisters up the street that just really provided me the opportunity to understand what true best friends were. And where it becomes important is because she was one of the people that actually passed away with 4 other of my friends in a couple years later. So I went to New York. Well, Sarah Lawrence is near New York, but I moved to New York City as soon as I possibly could. I did the whole acting thing, modeling thing, singing thing, all that stuff for a couple years. My parents were very smart in that they always instilled upon me to have a plan B. So I started working in insurance investigations. It was so strange. While I was there, 9/11 happened, so it's part of my book as well. But insurance investigations taught me how to do everything and anything legal. So I know how to write a kick-ass, excuse my French, business letter. It was just incredible learning for me. And then I started dating some people, and I started to kind of fall in love and kind of learn what love was. And through that time, it was about a 2 or 3 year period where I lost 5 of my friends. Some were very, very close to me. Some I knew, in terms of some I knew were going to die, others I didn't know. And it was a really interesting time. I had no idea at the time that I was a medium, right? But I got glimpses, and I always knew things about people throughout my early 20s, and this was my early 20s. So I thought it was totally interesting and normal when my friend Luli, one of the 2 sisters I mentioned, when she came to me after she died, like 2 weeks after she died, and we had kind of a conversation. It was clearly in my head, but I knew it was her, and I felt her, and I smelled her, and I just thought that everyone does that from time to time. I guess I was wrong on that. So
I feel you. Keep going.
Yeah, not everyone feels that way. So then after that, I kind of had an existentialist crisis when I was 24 years old, and I kind of quit all my jobs and became a yoga teacher and a certified life coach. I went to schooling for that and got into rebirthing. And I was already into yoga, but I also became I said a yoga teacher. So it was this crazy, amazing time. I worked in spas and spa management. And I realized that I I just fell in love with LA. I had never considered LA ever, but my boyfriend at the time and I came to LA, and I just absolutely fell in love with it. And the fact that it's 75 and sunny all year long is really ridiculous. So I started kind of planning for my boyfriend and myself to move to LA 6 months out of the year when it was cold in New York, and he freaked out, and he stayed there in New York, and I came out here to LA. And so I've been out here in LA for many years now. And the interesting thing was I kind of went through somewhat of a depression when I came out to LA, because it was a breakup, but there was no one. I had no one in LA. None of my family was in California. Everyone's in New England. And so about 6 months, 7 months in, when I had just started making friends, they discovered I had cancer, and it was skin cancer. And so that also in my book is one of the stories that I tell. That was definitely mind-blowing, mind-boggling, and also it kind of cemented certain friends that I had here. And that going through that, being told, because after you are told you have cancer, you don't hear anything else on the phone. Then the interesting thing is then you have to tell everyone in your life, and then you have to basically take care of them and manage them and their feelings before you can deal with your own. It's really important, I think, that everyone with cancer kind of understand that, because I didn't understand that at the time, and I was like, why am I supporting everyone else get over this? Like, I'm the one going through this. But interestingly, I went to John Wayne Cancer Institute because that's out here, and I did one of those surveys at the end, and they said, what would you tell someone, or what would you tell a family going through this that they wouldn't necessarily know? And I told them, like, this is what's going to happen. Expect your family not to, like, just to be on the floor, and then when they're coming off the floor, you get to fall on the floor, So I went through that lovely experience, and then I started dating narcissistic individuals and learned a lot about what I didn't want and what I did want. And then that's when the second time in my life, so the first time in my life that I was held at gunpoint by the cartels was in Colombia. That was when I lived in Ecuador for a year, in around Easter time. So the second time was when I started working in Mexico. It was this incredible, amazing job. I was working with lemons in Mexico in the northeast corner. And yeah, I mean, we were pulled over by the cartels. We were normally pulled over by anyone because we had armored vehicles. So we were pulled over by police, and obviously there's several levels of police, and then there's military, and there's several levels of military. And so we would constantly get pulled over. But this particular day, I knew it was the Zetas cartel, and it was crazy, scary. And yeah, I mean, if you want to read all about that, we can talk about that later. But I basically realized that my life is not worth the $100,000 that they were paying me to work there, or it was worth way more. Trying to go chronologically, but I'm trying to think.
That's okay. No, let's dive a little bit deeper wherever you feel comfortable sharing. I would love to go back to your experience that you had. I do want to dive deeper into when you had cancer, but if you
Okay.
don't mind, I'd like to dive deeper into your experience when you had a learning disability. Because let's say the
Okay.
individual right now that's listening to this, let's say that they're going through that.
Okay.
And as you know, there is a lot of people in this country that struggle with this.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of young people, and they think that it defines who they are as a person, and that's not true. I personally have gone through that as a child and overcame it. But if you can speak to the voice of that person listening right now that is going through that, what was your mindset? Just steps that you took, and just how you spiritually, mentally, physically, just got through that, and somebody that's listening of how they can apply that to their life today.
Okay. Yeah, I think the best way to do that is kind of use the smile method
Yeah, let's do it.
yeah.
Yeah. Love
Just
it.
because even at 8, I was still doing it because I noticed that I do this whenever trauma or huge obstacles happen to me, loss, So I think when I was 8 years old, I just kind of went with it, right? Like, I think when they first told me that I had learning disability, I wasn't necessarily in shock, which is actually the S for the smile method, right? Or the shock didn't last that long. I think my parents were more shocked because I was a pretty smart kid. So, I mean, I speak 6 languages now, and I just like there's I was definitely one of the smarter kids. I just couldn't really form a sentence. So I knew that at the time that I knew that I would work very, very hard, and I wanted to prove them wrong. I wanted to prove that this was not going to affect my life. So the interesting thing about that is, the second step in my program, or my smile method, is mock acceptance. And I think I went through that for a very long time. So mock acceptance is part denial, part acceptance. So it's the moment where you're going through all the motions, you're getting things done. It's very easy to describe, essentially, when someone passes away in your life, the fact that you have to plan the memorial service or the commemoration of life, and you have to handle all of your relatives at the same time. You get through it because you absolutely have to get through that, And I think the mock acceptance is the body's way of delaying the information from actually sinking in too fast, So the mock acceptance for me in this situation was I went through it. I went to all the classes. I went through special ed. I was very present. Everything we did, I made sure that I did it 4 times as good, or 2 times as good every single day. I would go home, do the exercises by myself. I really didn't like it when my parents asked how special ed was, because it made me feel, less than. So I developed kind of like this thing with them, and I was like, just ask how my day was in all my classes, and then I'll tell you, what happened, right? Because I wanted them to know what was going on, but there was some type of identification that I had a problem with at the time, So I think through that, it was about a year or 2 that I was in special ed, and I think the interesting thing was that my third step is in overwhelmdom. So it's poignant and significant emotions passing through us, and they must happen. Like, you must go through these emotions, and you must feel the feelings. So I definitely acted out at times. I definitely got angry. When my parents would ask specifically how special ed, I'd be like, don't call it that. I'm not stupid, all this stuff. So it was my way of really getting angry, and I would get very angry and talk back to my mom, which wasn't the best thing at the time, but I was really angry that everyone thought I was kind of less than, right, the norm. And the interesting thing is, I didn't want that, like you just said, I didn't want that to define the rest of my life. So I decided at that time that I would in no way, shape, or form let that define me, and I would only let it propel me and inspire me and motivate me to do better, which is, interestingly enough, essentially the 4th step in the program, the method, which is learning. Because I think without the reflection and learning, you will not move forward. You'll be stuck there. And you need to gain insight into what's going on. So I think when I was 10 and coming out of special ed, and then I got the news that, oh my God, your son should skip a grade, not only did I feel vindicated, but I felt like that's great, because that's exactly what I want the rest of my life to be. So I decided at a very young age, at 10, that I would definitely not let that define me. And the interesting thing is, even to this day, we all have, the things that we say to ourselves once in a while, which is, I'm not good enough. And of course that still creeps its nasty head once in a while, but I become such an overachiever and a perfectionist my entire life. And it's always propelled me and inspired me to do better. And that's why I always go back to those moments when I realized that I was, in fact, in special ed, and how I would not let that define me for the rest of my life. So now the 5th step in the method is called embrace, right? So I just don't think acceptance is enough anymore in this world. And I mean, we're in the 21st century, so you need to enthusiastically embrace what happened to you. And so I love that that happened to me because I love telling the story and I love talking to kids and telling, listen, I had a learning disability. Now I speak like 6 languages and I'm learning my seventh and eighth, you know? Like, look what happened to me and look where I am now. And the success that happened along the way. And yes, it took a lot of work. And yes, it took a lot of willpower, but that's who I am. Like that's what fulfills me in my life. So yeah.
Wow. Wow, that's amazing. That's amazing. Congratulations.
Thanks. Thanks. It was, it's just, it's interesting how, like, I don't talk about it a lot, but when I talk about it, it really, really, really empowers me to even be better and do better, which is one of the major things I want from people. Also, no matter what anyone says to you, you can literally turn around and be like, watch me do better or watch me be better. Of course, after you do the work, right? Not when they immediately say that to you. But yeah, that's what has inspired and motivated me. And people to this day are still like, how do you, like, I just have so much energy. And I think it was just because during those 2 years, I really thought I was less than, and everyone kind of looked at me. And of course, you're in classes, and you're 8 or in second or third grade, and people are looking at you like, oh, you're in the special ed classes. It's that will always be right ingrained in my head. But I have transcended all of that. And it takes work, right? Like it's not like an overnight thing. It takes years and dedication and focus.
So you mean we can't just stick our emotions in a microwave and then the next day be like totally free?
The interesting thing is the loss that I've experienced in my life. It always takes a minute for me. So the shock and the mock acceptance usually can last anywhere from like 2 weeks to 4 weeks to longer. And then once I start really feeling it, I get really upset and I start crying. And I know that at that point, after a loss or a trauma, that it's finally starting to creep in what happened, and I can start the process. It doesn't mean I don't sit in front of Netflix for 5 days, but I put a limit on it. And I'm like, all right, I'm going to take the next couple of days and I'm just going to like feel sorry for myself and I'm going to go through these emotions and I'm going to get through it, get to the other side. And feeling it is raw, and feeling it is probably the most scary thing for, I think, the majority of the world. And what the majority of the world doesn't realize is that's not even the I don't think that's the hardest part. I think the most challenging part is the learning of it all. What did you learn? What are you going to do different next time? What are you going to do better next time? What are you going to do the same way the next time? What have you learned from this? What reflection, what insight have you gained from this? And that is, I think, the hardest thing, because it takes you out of this. It brings you, not only is it self-awareness, but it's also outer awareness of how we affect the world.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to add to what you're saying, I was listening to somebody speak the other day, and they were talking about how self-help books are really great, but what are we doing to apply one of those concepts to our life? Because we have maybe all these books, but maybe we've only read one of them halfway through.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah, and there's no, like, this is experimental and experiential, and you can learn from books. Obviously you can learn a lot from books, but I think mastering emotions and mastering the smile method and waking up and being happy or happier takes work, and it takes you doing the work yourself. No one can do this work for you.
so let's go through. I know you went through some of the steps, but let's go through your smile method. So S stands for.
S stands for smile, shock.
Okay,
Sorry.
and let's go through each of the letters. Go ahead.
Okay. So S is for shock.
Okay.
M is for mock acceptance,
Okay.
part acceptance. I is for in overwhelmed.
Okay.
L is for learning,
Okay.
and E is for embrace.
Okay. So just for somebody listening, if you were to summarize each of those in very simple terms, so let's go back to the S. What?
Sure. Yeah. So shock is inevitable. If someone tells you something, and it's hard to take, you will immediately go into some type of shock. That's usually a numbness, and it usually lasts from anywhere from like a couple hours to a couple weeks. It's your mind not being able to process the information fast enough. The acceptance is the part denial, part acceptance. So it's the part where the logistics get done, and it's probably one of the best places to finish a project, even though you're in the midst of loss and hurt. Like, you can get so much done because you are still kind of in denial, but you're also like, why do I feel okay right now? As I said earlier, I think it's the body's way of delaying the reaction and the processing. So in Overwhelmed, those are the poignant and the significant emotions. Those are the feelings that you're going to feel: the anger, the disappointment, the embarrassment, the love, the hate, the sadness, the depression. I mean, it all of those wonderful and terrific and terrible words all in one. And you must go through those emotions in order to get to the other side, which is the L for learning. So that's the reflection, the insight, the opportunity to really change who you are, where you're going, what you're up to, how you respond to situations. Finally, the embrace, again, because acceptance just isn't good enough anymore. And if you notice, they're basically based off of, well, not based, but I kind of did a revamp to Dr. Kubler-Ross's 5 Stages of Dying, and I've made them into the 5 Stages of Healing. And so one must enthusiastically accept what happened to you. Granted, death is probably the most challenging there, but death can give you so much. And as you said earlier, like, I love death and I love life, and which is, I know, rare, but death can teach us so much.
Oh, absolutely. And, thank you for sharing that. That's really beautiful, and congratulations on your book.
Thank you.
Is your book on Amazon?
Yes, it is.
Okay, great. Yeah, we'll definitely make sure to put the link for that below. So you guys, if this resonates with you, I definitely recommend for you guys to, purchase Seth's book.
Thank you.
Absolutely. So I would love to dive into your experience of when you had skin cancer. And that's amazing that you healed your body from that. But what I'd like to dive into deeply, again, wherever you feel comfortable sharing, is what was your experience going through that?
Yeah.
What did it do for you at a soul level? How did it change you? And then how did you, moving forward in your life, like, how did you look at life differently? Kind of a mixture of questions, but yeah, let's start there.
No, it makes sense. The interesting thing is, I don't think everyone knows this, but cancer already exists in our body. It's just literally like a malmutation, or it's a cell that has gone haywire, right? So, and then it gets activated by certain things that we do. And growing up, I spent years in the sun, never used sunscreen, and then I'm predisposed to moles from my Italian side. And together, the combination was not great. So, in the span of 3 months, I had 10 different moles removed. And the second to last one just happened to be, I think she said, she didn't tell me to sit down. She called me. It wasn't even the doctor. It was like the physician's assistant. And she said, yeah, so you have superficial spreading malignant melanoma. And all I knew was that, interestingly enough, in the 6th grade, I did this incredible project on melanoma. So I knew what that was. And then malignant, I knew what that was. I knew what that meant. I knew that meant cancerous. And then superficial spreading did not sit well with me. So I just said to her, you could have told me to sit down first. And she's like, oh, yeah, I guess. Yeah. Okay. And then I was like, oh my God, this young lady tells people this all the time. And she doesn't realize that she's just telling someone they have cancer. Wow. She said, and then she said to me, it's the most, I was like, what does superficial spreading mean? And she said, it's the most aggressive form of skin cancer. And I was like, wow. And I'm thinking to myself, wow, you're doing a real good, girl. You're doing real good here.
Oh my God.
So I sat down and I was like, okay, so what do we do? She's like, well, we want you to come in. We're doing more tests and we want you to get operated on right away. And you might have to have a couple procedures and lymph nodes removed. And I was like, I'm sorry, did you say I have to come in for more tests? Like it's again, the shock sets in and I didn't hear anything really that she said. All I knew was, we made an appointment for like 2 days later. And within 10 days, I was in the hospital getting lymph nodes removed, having what's called like a lymph node sentinel biopsy, which was very, at that time, which was 2006, 2007, it was revolutionary in terms of they put some bioactive, something, ink into your back or where the cancer is, and then they trace it to the nearest and closest lymph nodes, and then they remove those lymph nodes to be extra safe and careful. So as I told you, I hung up with her. I called my parents. Again, they hit the floor. At least I told them to sit down first. And my mother asked me 14 million questions because she's still thinking logically, whereas I'm still in this shock stage. So I'm like, I don't know. I didn't ask her that. I don't know. I mean, I was like 20, I was 27. I didn't know all the right questions to ask. So it was interesting how my whole family kind of responded, right? So I started going through the motions, right? Like, I think the mock acceptance came real quick, and maybe the next day, and I just went through the tests. I went for the tests, and I, was a trooper, and I told work, and they retroactively gave me benefits so that I could be on their plan, which was unbelievable of them at the time, I told my friends at that point, because remember, I had only been out here for like 7 or 8 months. So, and, one of them, I went with her to the hospital, and, it was just an incredible journey. And I think, again, I just went through it all within about a week. Right. So like, I think they told me on a Tuesday or Wednesday, and by Friday, the next Friday, I was in the hospital, and I was in and out procedure, but it was still 4 or 5 hours. So on my way home, I realized, wow, this is not cool. And I always need to wear sunscreen. I mean, I'm talking about superficial stuff and then we'll get deeper, but like immediately I knew that I had to change how I react to the sun because I'm pretty predisposed now to skin cancer. Mm-hmm. So it was from that moment on that I basically wear shirts, like all those t-shirts, like all the time at the beach, and even when I'm going swimming. But after that, when I got home, the doctor told me we have to run some tests, and then we'll see if you need radiation or chemo. And so those tests were 3 days later. We would get the results in 3 days. And that was the absolute worst because I don't think there's any way to quite explain what it's like, but not knowing is scarier than knowing. Because at least if you know, you can do research, right? But I didn't know. I didn't know what stage it was. I didn't know if the skin cancer had progressed amongst or beyond the limits of what they took out, right? And they took out a huge, like 2 inch by 2 inch chunk on the back of my back, not to mention like 4 or 5 lymph nodes and that sort of stuff. So those are probably the worst days I think I've ever had. And I had to keep myself busy. So I was aware enough to understand that I was going through something and crying a lot, but I had to go to work. I think chronologically speaking, I think it was the first couple days of the following week. So Friday I had my surgery, and then I was out for a week or two from work. So it was preceding the operation. I think that's when they had to decide if I was going to have chemo or radiation. And those 3 days, my boss, who was no help at all at the time, was like, why are you here? And then I just burst out crying. I was like, because I have to be here. I have to do work right now. Like, I have to do something with my time, right? Because sometimes TV and movies can't drown out the sound of silence and waiting for results. So I have a deep respect and admiration for anyone going through this, because those are the worst days. And I know, what I love about it what I love about what I've learned to, and embraced essentially is that someone else going through this, I can help them. I can help them because I've been through it. I can help them to say, oh my God, get Postmates, which is, Uber Eats, whatever, get Netflix ready, like just keep yourself busy. Finish a project, start and finish a project, go somewhere, go away for the weekend, go away with your family. Like I really have some great insight into that. Apart from that, I went to the doctor 2 weeks, or I think it was a week after my operation, and I learned that I always now take someone when I go to my oncologist, who I still have, or the dermatologist, because it's so important that someone else hear what's going on. Because when I went to the doctor a week later after my surgery, he was going to tell me he was going to tell me something like if he had any more worries, or if I was going to in fact need, I think chemo was ruled out, but the radiation wasn't. And he just said it in passing, and I missed it. And thank God my friend was there, and I was like, wait, so I don't need chemo or radiation or anything? And my friend looked at me and she's like, didn't you hear him say that? I was like, no, I pretty much didn't hear anything after. Everything looks good, Wow. So it really, so now I always take someone with me when I go to the oncologist and the dermatologist, because no matter what they say, I need someone else there to help. And I do it because it's not a place of weakness. It's a place of real strength. And I know myself. And to be vulnerable enough to ask someone else to be there for me, it really honors the relationship and who they are in my life. So it's a kind of a win-win-win every way. And it was really hard. The interesting thing is, like, I do not ask for help unless I really, really need help. It takes me a minute. So to ask someone to do that for me is a big deal. And since then, I filled out that survey, and the questionnaire about what would you do differently, or what would you tell people differently. I also told the young lady who was the physician's assistant, I also told her that she needs to understand that she might say that to people 10 times a day, but the other person on the phone, the other side of the phone, doesn't hear that every single day. And they see it as a death sentence, and she needs to understand that. So she, after that, she was always amazing to me, and she would tell me, like, what, I had that conversation, and I had asked them to sit down beforehand, and I just was like, that's cool. Like, maybe that will help her, and maybe that will help everyone else from not going through the little ordeal on the phone that I went through. I think everyone needs to be reminded every once in a while of that. So on a soul level, I'm trying to think how that affected me. I think it just, once again, reaffirmed the fact that I can heal from absolutely anything, physical, mental, or emotional. I didn't realize it at the time. Of course, now I realize that. But at the time, I went on with my life as if life was better. And, I was 26, 27, right? So I then went out drinking, and I went out to clubs with my friends, and, pretty quickly, and I developed a new normal, and then when I went to the beach, like, I have my 50 or 75, like, SPF, and I don't take off my shirt very often. And I just always remember those moments, and I use those to help other people.
Wow. That's amazing. Wow. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. It's and luckily I call it cancer light, because I have a friend who recently passed away too, a couple years ago. And she had breast cancer twice. And then, oh my God, I literally have to ask her what type of cancer she had. Uterine cancer. And that is no joke. So, in between her chemo and radiations, we were, like, filming something for me. And I just wanted to get her on camera, and get how she views life, because it was a really cool, just honoring of who she was, So anyway, yeah. So cancer is, it's everywhere, and it's not a death sentence anymore, obviously. But it can be really, really challenging for not just for you, but everyone around you. So, yeah.
I have an interesting question for you.
Okay. Okay.
Right now, when you said you had to ask her, did you literally just ask her right now?
Yes.
Oh my God, I love that. Being a very spiritual person myself, I
Yeah.
don't speak to people that are dead, but I do connect with spirit guides, and so that's why I was very interested in bringing you on the podcast because I've interviewed people just with that gift, and
Right.
I just think it's really amazing because we're all gifted with different things. So let me ask you right now, when because you're a coach, who are the majority of your clients? Like, do people come to you and be like, I want to know, is my like, if somebody comes to you, they're like, is somebody from my past trying to connect with me? Or who are the majority of your clients that you get? Because you do life coaching too. Like, what's your
Yeah.
main focus right now?
So the main focus right now is the intuitive business coaching that I do. So I coach for executives, professionals, and CEOs
Oh,
of
wow.
companies, and I combine essentially everything I've learned from corporate America over the last 20 years, and combine that with the intuitive, and then the coaching, the coaching certifications and all the experience that I've had there. So it's kind of a trifecta effect, and I love working with these people. So the majority of them are trying to take their business to the next level, interestingly enough. I also have clients who are just unhappy or stuck in their lives, right? And I call those more intuitive coaching. Obviously, there's quite a large price differential in between the two, right? So those are the majority of my clients. So, but for the purposes of your question, I find that most people that come to me for an intuitive reading want confirmation and affirmation that they're on the right path or they're doing the right thing. And then anyone who comes to me or me or my husband, because my husband is also a medium, actually.
Oh,
Uh,
wow. That's great.
yeah, yeah, that's how we met. And he and I do reading.
Wow.
Uh,
Sorry, this is
no,
amazing. Wow.
a good story. It's a good story. And then, yeah, so they come to us because they have a deceased loved one that they want to speak to, or they're feeling ashamed or embarrassed, or they've carried 20 years of unfinished business around, and those, it's just the best. I mean, I've seen people literally heal 20 years of like embarrassment or unfinished business in one sitting with me, and just because of one kind of story that I tell them.
Wow.
Which makes the work absolutely incredible. And yeah.
So I'm very fascinated to ask you. So you work with executives. So a lot of the people that listen to my podcast are also entrepreneurs. So let's say somebody listening right now, they're a business owner.
Sure.
And they may be interested in working with you. How is it that you can bring value to them and their business? But give us an example. Somebody reaches out to you. Okay, Seth, I need help.
Yeah, so first of all, right now it's really all word of mouth, right? So it's, hey, like my husband might need this, or my best friend's cousin might need this. So people are usually introduced to me. I do a lot of reach out on Facebook and LinkedIn. However, the best clients come to me with word of mouth. So they would come to me and say, hey, I know you do something a little different, and I've worked with coaches before, and I don't like working with coaches, but I don't necessarily believe in the intuitive or mediumship part of you, but I definitely understand that that's part of what you do, and as long as you infuse it, like, carefully, this is usually the conversation that happens, we'll move forward. But then they don't realize what a gift I have in the intuitive and the mediumship, because I can see what they can't. I can tell them what they need to hear. I can help them prepare for a meeting that they would not have otherwise prepared for. For example, I have this one client, he calls me his board, like his spiritual board, because he is not a spiritual guy. He's in Miami. And he says, you're my chairman, you're my vice chairman, you're my secretary, my treasurer, like everything all in one, because I give him information from different sources, and I receive information in many different ways. So sometimes I tell him that I'm seeing an image or whatever, and then he's like, when you say you see this image, is it like playing in your head? And I was like, yes. And he's like, okay. So we don't necessarily, I just tell him what I'm feeling, what I'm seeing, what I'm hearing, and what I'm receiving. And I tell it to him in a way, again, I've been in corporate America for 20 years, so I tell it to him in a way that he can receive the information, right?
Exactly.
And so sorry to interrupt you. So the essentially he was putting a meeting together for an investor, and I knew the investor was not going to be. I knew the investor's sister was going to be there for some reason, and that she wasn't going to be happy unless he did X, Y, and Z. I don't remember what it was. So I told him, I'm feeling that you might want to take it in this direction and cover these three items, and then prepare, ABC for the investor. And he did that. And was like, wow, you were so right. She was so interested in XYZ and not ABC, but he was more interested in ABC. But they're doing this together and they're investing together. So had I not said anything, he might not have gotten the deal. It's yeah. And even when he said once to me, I think you were wrong. And I was like, was I wrong, or was it exactly what you needed to hear to put you in a different direction? Like I'm not telling you information from me. Sometimes from an HR or an operations perspective, I can give you my experience, right? My professional intuition. But the majority of the time, I'm telling you what I receive. So it's not really me being wrong. It's just that's what they're showing me at the time. And I try and make it, no, I don't try. I make it a very wholesome experience, so that they're talking, I'm talking, it's a conversation. I'm not going to woo-woo for people. I'm keeping it real and pragmatic, but also infusing the intuition and the mediumship into it. And then we talk about their past, right? And a lot of people don't know how everything they do in life is a direct influence of how they've lived their life and choices that they've made. So we always talk about fun things like that, and how they grew up, and and it's not in an invasive way. And if they don't want to talk about it, I'm like, do you want to be right, or do you want to have a better life, or leave a better legacy? So I always tell people it's about reframing your past, re-engaging in the present, and then building a better legacy and future for yourself and everyone around you.
Wow, that's amazing. I love that.
Yeah, I love it, and I learned so much. And I'm still accepting clients for now because I have a couple more slots to fill. But they're going fast. So
I would imagine the clients that you have, you do it as a package basis. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah, it's usually like a month. It's usually monthly. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. That's good, because you get people that are committed instead of just getting one coaching session and
Right.
maybe running away or something.
Right. And everyone I've had has been with me for 6 months or longer at this point, because I really started mid last year, and I have a couple new clients starting this month, which is now February. So yeah, so it's a very exciting time for me.
That's amazing. So my next question to you is, so it seems like this is something that feeds your soul. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Yeah.
What do you like to do as far as, what do you like to do for yourself? Could be anything from, do you still like to do yoga? Do you
I would
eat
like
a
to do
plant-based diet? I mean, there's no judgment here. I'm just really fascinated to know.
It's really funny that you should say those two things. Yoga was always my life. I'm a yoga teacher, right? So, but yoga hasn't been a part of my life for like 4 months now. So I'm missing yoga. And I do have a plant-based more of a plant-based diet, but it's more of the blood type diet. And I infuse, pescatarian every once in a while in there. I meditate 5-6 times a week. I meditate before every client, like every mediumship or intuitive client. I go for hikes a lot. I see my family a lot on the East Coast, because that gives me strength, inspiration to do better and be better myself. And also working with my husband on we're writing a couple children's books right now, and we want to eventually open up schools for intuition and mediumship in the United States, because there aren't really many right now. So we have a lot of stuff to do. We get to do a lot of stuff together.
That's amazing, because I remember reading that was one of your dreams when you were little, is that you wanted to start writing children's books when you were like 8 years old.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, I'm so blown away by your story. It's just amazing. I have no doubt that many people are going to be inspired. It's just, it's really beautiful what you've been sharing.
I hope so. I hope so.
Yeah, it just one thing that I just really appreciate about you, and you can, because our voice is, we can't hide our voice, right?
Right.
And I just love how you are, everything that you're saying and the way that you speak. It's like you walk your walk, you talk the talk. And you're very
Thank you.
confident and very sure of yourself. And it shows in the way that you speak and how you embody your life. So I just really want to congratulate you for that. It's very inspiring.
Wow. Thank you. That's awesome. I appreciate hearing that.
Absolutely.
I have the biggest smile on my face right
It's
now.
beautiful. And that is obviously taking you a lot of work to get to where you're at. And as you know, by no means does it stop. We're growing every single day, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yep. Yep.
Yeah, so that's amazing. So I was also, my next question for you is clients that you work with. Do you ever work with people that, I understand that your specialty is like with business, but do you ever have people that ask you about, do you ever work with like twin flames or any sort of thing like that, soulmates?
Um, I have worked in groups before. I do a lot of bereavement work with groups.
What?
Um,
I didn't hear what you said. You do what work?
I do bereavement work with groups and facilitations with
What is bereavement? I'm not aware of what that is.
for people who've lost an animal or a loved one. Uh,
Mm,
helping them work through the stages of healing, I suppose, right? But yeah, no, I have worked with couples before. Happy to work with couples, but not twin flames specifically or that sort of stuff. I think my husband would be very much into that, though.
okay, okay. Perfect, perfect.
Yeah,
No, the
sure.
reason I was asking was because I wanted to ask your feedback as far as, but if that's not an area that you touch in, that's fine. Just as far as like um, what your take is on the whole. You know, sometimes we get so caught up on the twin flame, soulmate sort of thing of one. Well, you obviously were on your journey of being single, and then you found your husband, but I
Right.
just feel like this is coming up right now in the eclectic, but could you just, even if you just want to share a few sentences, just something, somebody that's listening, let's say that they're looking for their soulmate twin flame, just from at the soul level that you're at now and through your experience, like what is advice that you would give to somebody?
Yeah. No, totally. Great question. Um, I when I woke up the second time after I had one relationship and then basically another relationship where I woke up one day and decided to myself I deserve better. The second time I did that, I broke the pattern finally, and the world opened up to me from an intuitive and mediumship perspective, tenfold, 20-fold, right? So I want to say to everyone, if you deserve better, then you absolutely deserve better. And I believe there's so much more than just one person out there for everyone. I also believe that everyone will find their twin flame or soulmates along the way, but it has to be at the right time. And I say that because my husband and I, when we first met, like he wasn't ready and I wasn't ready, but I knew that I was going to marry him. And I told my mother like 2 weeks after we met, and he and I kind of were speaking every day. And then we went to speaking once a week, and then for a couple months, and then it again kind of picked up. So he and I needed that time to get our houses in order, literally, figuratively, and emotionally and spiritually before we could make this happen. So I feel like I tell a lot of people that you don't want to meet your lover or your soulmate or your twin flame right now because they're not ready and you're not ready. So you will meet them at the right time that you're supposed to meet them. And whether that's at 24, 18, 85, enjoy every minute and learn as much as you can from every relationship that you have.
Wow. If you don't mind me asking, when you
Yeah.
said you were talking to your husband, um, did you mean you were communicating with him on a spiritual level, or was this in the physical world?
Physical. Yeah.
Okay.
Physical. Yeah. I Instagram stalked him just like everyone else does.
No, the reason I'm asking is because I coach women, and
Okay.
because I'm an inner transformational coach other than doing my podcast. And
Awesome.
one of the things that I've come across, and I share this with you because, you're a very spiritual person, is that some of these people, a lot of these women have found their twin flame. They're either with their twin flame or they had some sort of spiritual connection before they met them, or they met them and then there is a spiritual connection, and then there's like not connection in the real world. And
Yeah.
my question to you is this. I think this is a really powerful question. I feel that it'll bring a lot of value to people. I just would
Okay.
love to receive your insight. Is that, let's say you have somebody that gets stuck in the spiritual realm, and it's like sometimes just because there's a connection doesn't necessarily mean that you're meant to be with that person. But what would you
Absolutely.
recommend to
Yeah.
somebody that is trying to break through that cycle of
Yeah.
letting go and getting back into themselves in the real world? I know
I mean, I
that's a
think
really deep question, but
no, no,
I just would
it's
really love your feedback on that if you'd love to.
yeah, no, it's a great question, and I think everyone is sometimes okay with the status quo, and they don't want to change things for lack of being alone, and they're afraid of the reactions and responses of those around them. So I feel like if you're not being honored and cherished in a relationship, then you need to look at that and consider that. I invite you to always strive for better. I think that when I said I deserve better, like I believe everyone deserves the best treatment possible. And if you're not receiving that, then you need to consider the options and your options. And I know that it's tough and challenging, but this is your life. And as we see it, right, it's your physical life now. So technically, I know you have many lives, but right now, this is your life. And you want to make it the best possible life for you. And if your partner isn't cherishing and challenging and inspiring you to be better and do better, then I really feel like you need to consider some options. And I know that there are obligations and complications in there with children and finances and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, it's up to you and your happiness. And kids understand and they see it. They see it way more clearly than I think most people even realize. If someone's not happy or not being treated well, they see it and know it. So you're doing yourself and your family a service by considering other options. Um, it's tough. It's sometimes really really tough to make the best decision for you, but sometimes you get to be selfish and know that you deserve better.
Wow, that was powerful. So I have a few more questions and then we'll wrap up. I just really want to thank you. This has just been very magnetizing, just really powerful. So thank you so much for your beautiful energy.
Thanks. I don't want to talk too much, but I appreciate the question. They make me feel better and focused, as opposed to
Absolutely.
talking about me and my past.
Oh, absolutely. So my next question to you is, how do you want to be remembered when you take your last breath?
Ooh. Um, I really want to be known as the man, or I'm sorry, as the individual or the human being that gave everyone the opportunity to heal from anything. And the you can heal from anything is really one of my major messages in life, and hopefully will transcend death. I'm working on a couple TV projects right now and a couple more books and blah blah blah, and it all seems like I want to also destigmatize the taboo around death, because I feel like we all have such emotions and feelings and things about death, whereas death is one of the most beautiful parts of life. And having experienced it in every single way, shape, or form, having helped so many thousands of people like bereave and feel better about life and death, I really want people to also understand that this guy really was an expert in life and death. And every project, I have this affirmation that I say, like, all the books that I create and all the movies that I produce will have everlasting, will give everlasting inspiration, to the world over and over again.
Wow. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
My next question to you is, what does happiness from within mean to you?
I mean, when I knew I was going to be on the show, I literally looked at my book and was like, oh my God, how I learned to smile from the inside. Smiling from the inside is the exact thing as happiness from within. It's when you have become so aware, or you become aware enough in your life to understand that every choice and decision that you make affects everyone around you, and that you can not only heal from everything and that you deserve better, but also that you you don't sweat the small stuff when you get a ticket, or instead of that road rage, or when you get laid off. Like, you don't fly off the handle and get all upset. Like, you deal with it and deal with anything that comes your way in the most incredible, reflective, learning and embracing way you can.
Wow. I love that. I'm smiling right now. I love that.
Because it's not about smiling all the time, even though I was born smiling, my mother says. But, like, it's really about having, if someone gets upset with you, being like, what's going on? Like, talk to me. Like, what's really going on for you? As opposed to getting angry and upset and, like, defensive, and being vulnerable from time to time.
Absolutely. I like how you said the part about the awareness, because I think
Yeah.
sometimes we're not aware. Something might happen, and then it's easy to become a victim, right? So
Yeah,
awareness is the key. So thank you for sharing that. So my last question,
absolutely.
thank you. My last question to you is this: as through spirit, whatever is floating right now in the universe, I would love for you to share a message with everyone as far as the eclectic, just anything from your heart for closing words. It could be a quote, just anything you'd like to share to provide words of wisdom, courage, healing in regards to anything.
Yeah. Whew. I think that's the biggest question of the day, really. Because I'm feeling around for it, and they're telling me, like, trust myself. So, I just want everyone to know that they can change their lives. They can transform their lives. They can make that difference, make that impact, change that job, get that job. I mean, you can do anything you want in this life. And it's not something we usually say to people, but no matter what gender you are, what ethnicity, race, sexuality, whatever, you can do anything you want. And when someone says no to you, you can just use that as further, like, let me make the impossible possible.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow, this is amazing. I'm just so honored. Seth, where can people find you?
I am SethElliot.com, SethSantoro.com. You can find my How I Learned to Smile, my book, How I Learned to Smile from the Inside, on Amazon. You can do that. I am Seth Elliot on, Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest. I'm Seth Elliot. So it's, it's and then LinkedIn too, obviously, because that's, you would find Seth E. Santoro on LinkedIn. Look up Intuitive Business Coach. There's not that many of us out there. So
That's great.
but I really, really appreciate you in having me on the show. You've helped me to feel really grounded, and just that the work that I'm doing is really important.
Absolutely. I actually have one more question for you. So you speak 6 languages. Somebody listening to this in another country, do you only coach people that speak English, or do you coach people that speak Spanish or French or Portuguese?
I also speak, well, I am coaching right now. I started coaching someone in Spanish,
Oh, great.
Yeah, and then I think Portuguese I could do. I would just have to respond to them in English, but
Okay.
I could definitely understand what they were saying. And then same thing with Italian. I can understand what they're saying. And then I'm learning Afrikaans because my husband is from South Africa.
Oh,
So
wow.
eventually my goal is to start doing them. I already have a client in South Africa, but this person speaks English only. So yeah, so Spanish and Portuguese for sure.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, so
Yeah,
any of you guys that are from those countries or you speak those languages, make sure to reach out to Seth. So just really want to thank you from my heart to yours. Thank you so much for this beautiful episode. I
mm,
look forward to connecting with you more on social media and look forward to meeting you in the future.
absolutely. Can't wait.
And thank you so much.
Thank you.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much. Have a beautiful evening and I'll talk to you soon.
Okay.
Bye for now.
Okay. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.